Welcome to our Biz for Biz WebeXions for May. I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Katherine Bean, who is a pioneer in the field of artificial intelligence. With all the buzz around AI and the impact and the intense debate over the workplace, we're lucky that we have Dr. Katherine that will unpack and unravel the mysteries for us, and also how AI can empower your business. We are recording this session today, and there will be ample time after the session to have a question and answers. So without further ado, I will welcome Dr. Katherine and hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that very friendly introduction. And yes, today's talk is going to be on practical generative AI. That basically means how can we use the new generative AI tools, and AI here means artificial intelligence, to essentially make our businesses more productive and get more done for less effort. So this is me, Katherine. You'll notice a different hairstyle here in the picture to the one in the little thumbnail. Shouldn't worry about it, it's still the same me. I have a background in business and in technology, so I have a PhD in electrical and electronic engineering, specializing in AI. And this was back in the day when AI was all the rage before it fell out of favor and then became back all the rage again. So that's how long ago it was. I work in business, helping people to improve their own businesses. I help them sell more, save, and that means save money, cutting out waste and other stuff, and I help them to grow. And when I say grow, I mean by not firing employees, I mean to grow their business. To grow, you have to have more people doing more stuff. And while I fully accept there are AI tools that can help with this, we'll discuss those in a minute. I'm from a company called DVANA, and our tagline is Business Technic, which broadly translated means business technology. So we're interested in the technology of business, whether that's processes, procedures, software, pens and pencils, it doesn't matter. If there's something that makes a business more effective, we consider that to be business technology. Now, to get going, I have a quick video that gives a little bit of explanation about DVANA, so I'm going to play that for you now.
Ever wondered what sets thriving businesses apart? DVANA has the answer. We're not just a tech company, we're architects of success, redefining technology beyond computers and software. Paper, pens, computers. It's not just tools, it's the art of mastering techniques to elevate your business. DVANA's mission is simple yet profound, making businesses like yours wildly successful. Imagine your business as a well-oiled machine. Upgrade your tools with powerhouses like Great and Workstream, just like upgrading from a manual screwdriver to an electric one, revolutionizing your workflow and staying ahead in the game.
It's not just about tools, it's about empowering your team with knowledge. Our secret? Expert mentoring and coaching, ensuring every upgrade is a step towards success. Your business evolves. So should your processes. With tools like Great and Workstream, and the revolutionary leap from a manual screwdriver to an electric one, we make the transition seamless and rewarding. DVANA, where success isn't just a goal, it's a reality. We craft success stories using the perfect blend of tools like Great and Workstream, technology and strategies, using the right tool for the job at hand. Connect with us today and unlock a future where profitability soars, employee well-being thrives, and turnover becomes a thing of the past. Experience the transformative power of DVANA, where Great and Workstream are not just tools, they're the catalysts for your success. Just like upgrading from a manual screwdriver to an electric one, it's a game changer. DVANA, empowering small and medium-sized businesses for unparalleled success with tools like Great and Workstream. Your journey to prosperity begins now.
I hope that that was informative and you now have a much better idea of who DVANA are and what we do. Right, let's push into artificial intelligence. This is an umbrella term. So artificial intelligence covers three distinct forms of, we'll call it computer systems. So there is expert systems. You've probably come across these, at least on the receiving end. Every time you apply for a credit card or a loan at the bank and they type away busily at the computer and then a verdict comes back, that's almost certainly an expert system that the bank developed to determine who should and shouldn't have loans. Machine learning, that is a little more recent, but the general idea is that the machine algorithms, the way they work, they take data and they use the data that is, we'll say, more recent. They use that to adapt the way they are behaving. All kinds of uses of machine learning, and we're not really going to go into those today because our interest is the deep learning. This is so-called neural networks, and this is what is used for the generative AI. And that's the bit we really care about today because we're interested in producing something. You've probably heard a lot of talk over the last year about generative artificial intelligence. There are lots of companies, and I'm not naming names because there are new startups coming up all the time who have new and interesting products. We can create video to a greater or lesser extent. We can create music, we can create text, written and spoken, and we can create pictures. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about when we talk about generative AI. So I'm going to start with a large language model. Those are so-called LLMs, and they are what you probably think about when you're thinking of the computers talking and understanding what people are saying. You want something to write you an essay? It's the large language model. So the question is, how does it do it? And we're not going to go into the technical detail, just a quick skim over the surface so you have an idea of what some of these terms mean and basically how we can use them, because that really is the important bit. So while I said I'm not going to name names, I am going to have to use ChatGPT as an example for the simple reason that the GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. So you are chatting, the chat part, with a GPT, which is your generative pre-trained transformer. So you're talking to the large language model, and the GPT bit tells you how they made the model. So looking across at our little pictures here, we now know what the technical name is. We know it generates text. We know that it's comparatively easy to use because we've all tried it. We've seen the interface. You quite literally just type a question in English and in almost like a teletype manner, the results come back one word at a time. It's easy to use, but it's hard to master. So you can do something today and get a fab result, do something almost the same tomorrow, and the result is, well, let's just call it a basket case. And you don't know why. That's because small changes in the way you started up talking to the large language model and the way it does its own internals. A small change on your input can mean there's quite a big change on the output, which leads us to lots of tricks. And I'm going to say tricks, but we could change the word to techniques if you prefer. They're needed to make it work properly. And by properly, I mean well, to give us the answers and the results we're looking for. That piece of how do you interact with it, how do you make it work well, the term of art is called now prompt engineering. It is how you interact with the LLM. If you get this right and you get your prompts correct, in good shape, then you'll get fab results. But it can be frustrating because if you do get it wrong, you don't get what you're looking for, and you have to know when to stop and start again. It's just the way it is. And the other thing that's probably really, really important with the LLMs is creating a context for the chatbot. You have to be able to say to it, You're working in the field of marketing. You are a friend. You are a confidant. You are whatever it is you want the chatbot to do. If you want the LLM to pitch up and be a sales executive, then tell it that you want it to think like a sales executive. If you want it to be your boss, tell it to act like your boss. You have to provide that context for it to understand where it can work and how it should direct the different possibilities of answers. Because from a practical point of view, it isn't thinking in the same way you think. It doesn't have real world experience. It doesn't know that apples grow on trees because it doesn't know what an apple is. It doesn't know what a tree is, and it has no idea what food or fruit are in the same way you do. To the LLM, they are just statistical relationships. You're much more likely to find the word fruit in connection with food than you are in connection with cars. So it will have a tendency to put the word fruit and apple in a similar context because they're more commonly associated together. And you may look at it and go, ooh, you've chosen a very bad example there, Katherine, because apples could be phones or computers. And you're right, they could be. And if you start talking about phones and you use the word Apple, then it will know that you're talking about Apple, the computer company, not Apple, the fruit, because of the association with phones and computers. That's why it's so important when we're doing our prompt engineering that we give it the context so it knows which of these different sets of possibilities it should be going for. So let's have a look at a couple of examples. I'm going to read them out because that gives me an idea of pacing. So close your eyes, don't worry about it, or follow along as you're listening. So an example of a prompt. You're a trusted team member working with a dedicated team of marketing specialists. Your job is to review content to determine what changes should be made to give people viewing the text a more favorable view of the company and will make them more likely to do business with the company. Do you see what we've done here? We've given the AI, the LLM, some kind of context. We've told it where it's working, what it's doing. It's a marketing specialist. We've told it what its job is. It's going to be reviewing text. We haven't told it what the text is yet, but that would be the next sentence. So after this, we then say, the text to review is, then probably a colon, then paste in the copy, right, for the marketing piece that we're looking at having improved. And then, hey presto, it will do its type one word back at a time and give us an idea of what should be done. So that's one example. My next example, if you noticed, only a small amount of the screen changed because, once again, I'll read it to you. You're a trusted team member working with a dedicated team of computer specialists. You're analyzing web content to determine what changes should be made to give people viewing the page a better understanding of the topic and to make the page more useful in driving conversions to the company's product. So you see, once again, I've given it context. I've told it it's part of a team of computer specialists analyzing web content. We're trying to make the content more accessible, more usable, and we've told it why, what we're trying to do, drive conversions to the company's products. The whole point here is we've given it the context, we've given it the understanding. Our next sentence would be the page that you're updating is, and then we give it the text. It will then do its type one word at a time, and we get our content back. So we can now work out some kind of, I'm going to call it a critical workflow. These are the things you must do to get the system to work. So you have to have an initial idea. This doesn't have to be an entire written piece of work. It can be bullet points. The less you give it, the more creative it's going to be. And I'm going to say that could be a bit of a mixed blessing. It could be that it's creative in a good way. It could be creative in a bad way because it might be thinking completely in the different direction to what you planned. So you give it an initial idea with bullet points or some rough text or something similar. Then you let the LLM do its thing. Remember what we just talked about with the prompt engineering. You're then going to use this prompt and you're going to read what it gives you back and you're going to go, oh, you know what? I should have told it to do X. So you update the prompt and you refine it over several iterations. It only takes a few minutes until you've got something that you think, actually, that's pretty good. I can work with that. So you grab the copy that the machine has written and you copy and paste it and put it into Word or word processor of your choice. Then you go through and you fix any grammar and spelling mistakes because there's a very good chance the LLM will have given it you in American English and you probably want British English. If, of course, you're an American, then you leave it with the American English. Next, you need to edit the wording because you have to be thinking about your company's brand voice, your product voice. You need to make sure all of those things are correct. So, for example, when I'm doing something, I never use the phrase salesman, saleswoman, salesperson. I always use sales professional. So if I'd used this and it had pitched up and written something for me and said, a salesperson does this, or a sales executive, I would change that to sales professional because that's the phraseology I always use. So you go through it just like you would any piece of text, whether you'd had it written by somebody else, a copywriter, your mom, your dog's cat's best friend, or whoever it is. You read through it and you make sure it's correct. One of the things that the LLMs are prone to doing is, now the term of art is hallucinate, but broadly speaking, it means make stuff up. And by make stuff up, I mean quite literally, it can invent whole pieces of technology that don't exist, given half the chance. So if there's any facts that are in your piece of, what should we call it, copy, then you absolutely must double check that they're correct, either because you already know or because you've gone and looked them up yourself. It will be very convincing whether it's right or wrong. So just keep that in mind. So copy your final version into the word processor, absolutely fix grammar and spelling, and update for your company's voice. That's broadly all you need to do. Even the bit that you think is going to be hard, they have the initial idea. That's very simple because you only have to have a vague idea. And from that vague idea, you can quite easily just move on and create something. And if you're really, really stuck, you can actually have the LLM give you ideas. All right, so that's generating text, written text. Next, image generation. This is a little bit more fun because we've got stuff to show. So here we go. I didn't create this. I got this off of Microsoft's Image Create. Somebody else created this. You can see on the right-hand side. That was the prompt they used, and this is the result they got. A whole host of, I'm going to call them cute little, possibly sweet ghosts, maybe marshmallows, or I don't know, compressed sugar. They look a bit like candies to me. Anyway, that's one. Here's another one, photorealistic image of a kitten in a hammock. I don't know about you, but that kitten looks pretty darn happy. Next, the battle between the water and the rock, the river and the rock. This one, even though you can't see it, over the right-hand bit on the right, is a fantastic picture. This would look awesome as a poster framed on the wall, generated by the image generator. Right, we're now going to move into what is going to be a bit of a theme, mini wolves. So we have a mini wolf here entering a secret computer system. And because mini wolves just love their iPads, as I'm sure you know, this one has 2 iPads. But the important bit here is look at the composition. There's a plush toy mini wolf. There's iPads. If you look carefully, the text on the screen you can see technically is backwards, almost as if you're seeing through the screen. Is that a perfect image? Maybe, maybe not, but I think it's definitely usable if you need a picture of a mini wolf logging into a secret computer system using an iPad. This one, I used another one of Microsoft's AI tools to jazz this picture up a little bit. So this became part of a greeting card, and I've put it on a little bit of an angle, jazzed it up a little bit, but it looked very nice. It was very easy. Instead of having to do all the design work, figure out what I wanted, it presented me with a whole host of different options, and I chose the one that looked like a piece of real film with a single frame inside it with the mini wolf in. And the trick here is not so much that you couldn't do this yourself. You couldn't do this yourself in 20 seconds, half a minute. This, if you were even a graphic designer, would have taken you probably an hour or more once you figured out what it was you wanted to do. Once again, the same image, this time to create a poster. Once again, this just took seconds to do. Okay, some more mini wolf pictures. I particularly like the one in the lab coat with the tie because it just looks so sincere, dedicated. These are all part of the same batch. So the first mini wolf you saw with the iPad we just looked at, and these two, they were all created in the same batch of 4. Next, a photorealistic photo of a robot typing on a MacBook Pro. The room is minimalist with a landscape image on the wall behind the robot. And if you look at this, the image is actually very nice. But if you look very carefully at the keyboard, well, they're not exactly keys. It's not quite clear what's going on. The robot's right hand appears to only have half a thumb. The longest finger appears to be missing part of a finger. It's not quite right. But if you're looking at it casually, you're not going to see those pieces. And that's one of the things we have to do. When we're looking at AI-generated pictures, the very first thing you have to look at is the overall composition, but that's easy. I've got a robot MacBook Pro on the table. I'm clearly in a minimalist room, and there's a landscape picture behind the robot. Great. The MacBook Pro looks fine until we look at the keyboard, and then we go, not quite. Then we look at the robot hands, and always, always check the hands, because the AIs have a lot of trouble with hands. They're getting better, but they do have a lot of trouble with hands. So let's move on. So Christmas. This is a really, really nice picture, and I want you to pay attention to the caption. So you'll notice the only change to the prompt here was outdoors near a frozen pond. It's a completely different tree, but it looks fab. The outdoors scene with all the snow and everything looks really nice. Looks very, I'm going to say, chocolate box, or, well, this would look perfect as a Christmas card. So if you're stuck for Christmas cards for your clients next year or next Christmas, you can pop online to an AI generator, get a chocolate box Christmas cardy looking image, and hey presto, you have a Christmas card, whether it's digital or whether it's printed. You have something quick and easy. Right, so we've made pictures of a person, right? Busy office worker making phone calls to help the clients make more money. Now, if you think about it, that's a pretty good stretch from that prompt to this picture. But what we've got is we've got a busy guy, right? We're checking his hands. The hand on the phone looks good. Phone looks like it's being held naturally. He looks pretty good. Nothing obviously wrong with him, right? Checking on what will be his right hand. He appears to have 4 fingers and a thumb. That's looking good. Everything on the desk looks fine, except inexplicably, there's an alarm clock sitting on his arm. And you have to wonder, did he notice? Did he notice he's got an alarm clock on his arm? I'm guessing probably. So despite the fact that this is basically a perfect picture, you either have to crop off the alarm clock or cover it with a logo or do something. Otherwise, the picture's not useful. Right? Otherwise, this is a good one. This one, the face is fabulous. The hand holding the phone, yeah, that looks good. Except the phone cord just goes into the desk. That's not ideal. Got good keys on the keyboard on the laptop. Shame he's only got 3 fingers though. Yeah, not great, unless you can crop the bottom out the picture. You can get rid of the bottom of the picture, so you can get rid of the fingers, you could get rid of the phone cord. Yeah, at that point, this would be usable. Otherwise, it's a chucker. But the hair is good, the face looks nice, the background is fab. You know, otherwise, it's pretty good. This one. Fingers look good on the phone. Maybe there's a phone. It goes off the screen, so it doesn't matter. He's got the right number of features, good eyes, nose, mouth. The other hand looks reasonable. Nothing obviously wrong with it. That one we could probably use as is. This one. Face is good. The hand at the edge, at the right-hand edge of the screen, that looks really good. His expression is amazing, but there is the possibility of something wrong in his fingers on what is essentially his right hand, the one holding the phone. There might be the impression of an extra, I'm going to call it bit of finger. Otherwise, that would have been an awesome picture. Okay. People having a Christmas party. Right, this is the part where we're going to get into the lizard people part of the presentation, right? There's nothing really wrong with this picture. Possibly the woman on the left, something a bit iffy with her tooth. But the people all just look a little airbrushed to my liking. Other than that, the picture is fine. Right, this one. This one is a smoking hole in the ground. If you look at it, there are too many people and the AI didn't know how to make them. I mean, this has all the hallmarks of, well, Ghoul Fest, really, doesn't it, if you look at it? So, not really very good. The people are a disaster. The food is probably passable. The decorations are probably fine, although it might well be a fire hazard in the making. Not useful. Ooh, sorry. And this one I think is worse for different reasons. So if you look in the foreground, and I don't know if my mouse will show up, here, there is some food, but I have no idea what that is, why there is so much of it. The faces are not that great. People's hands are bad. Composition-wise, it's probably okay, but it's actually completely unusable because all their faces are distorted. I mean, this has all the makings of something out of a horror movie. Right, on a much more positive note, so landscape pictures, if you have a need for those, it can produce you absolutely amazing landscape pictures. So you can see the prompt because the prompt is clear on all of these images. I think this one is absolutely gorgeous. This one too, even though the right-hand side is covered by the white because of the blend in with to make the text visible, the full frame of these pictures is absolutely stunning. All of these would make excellent posters or framed pictures on the wall. And as I said to you, it creates them in batches of 4. And because these were all so nice, and I struggled to just show 2 of them, I thought, you know what? I'll put all 4 of them up. So you can see the 2 we've already looked at. The other 2 look equally stunning. Dramatic lighting, nice autumn colours. There's dynamism, there's movement. Yeah, they just look fabulous. Don't have to be autumn. This is one I created, daffodils, outside a country cottage on a sunny day. Nothing wrong with it. Right, so let's have a quick look at our critical workflow, shall we? Once again, you have to have an initial idea. Now, you can have the idea. You can go to an LLM and you can say, write me a prompt to do this. Okay, so when it says write prompt, you could use an LLM to help you make the prompt. You tell it what you're trying to do, it writes you the prompt, and then you use that prompt to generate the image. Or actually, technically, several images. Then comes the tricky bit. You have to assess the images, and this means looking very carefully in depth at each component. First of all, look for the whole composition. Does it look reasonably good? Can you use that as a composition? If yes, great. Now, look at the detail. If there are people, are their faces normal, right? You saw some of our lizard people, horror movie people. They didn't look good. If that all looks fine, like we saw on our other pictures, count the number of fingers. Ideally, you want 4 fingers and 1 thumb. If they're hidden naturally, that's fine. So if there's only 3 visible, but that's because they're wrapped around a telephone or some such, then that's perfectly okay. Count the number of limbs. You want to make sure people only have 2 arms. And we'll come to that, I think, a little bit later, right? You can find that people are in crowd scenes holding a glass, but there's no person attached to the forearm. You have to make sure all of those are correct. And it's easy to make a mistake. So you really have to look at it, go, yes, this is a good one, put it to one side. Obviously, all the bad ones, just delete them because there's no point in keeping those. And then an hour or 2 later, come back to it and do a check again, because sometimes you see something you missed. And you have to get into the habit of checking images. I've seen quite a few people using generated images, and they've looked only at the composition and they haven't looked at the detail. And you look at it and you go, that person's missing an entire hand. Oh, I never saw that. I didn't notice. Oh, I just saw the composition. It all looked good. Because unless you're looking for this detail, you don't normally look at this. When you're buying, say, stock images, you just go to the stock image website and you know that all the models have the correct number of fingers. They have the correct number of limbs. But when the AI is generating, it starts out, and this is how they generally generate the pictures, it starts out from what is essentially noise. Every pixel in the picture is just fuzzy. And then through the steps of the AI generation, it tries to convert that fuzziness into what you asked for. And so if it goes, there's a limb there, a forearm, it doesn't necessarily go, there has to then be an upper arm and a shoulder and a torso connected to it, which for a usable picture you absolutely do need. And also check for silly placement of objects, like the alarm clock we saw, which is just sitting on the guy's arm for no reason at all. And once you've got this, I'm going to call it near perfect image, or at least a pretty darn good one, use it as you need to, right? And this is our thing here. This is our key point. Assess the images, because you can very easily look like a banana, right? By putting out, I'm going to say, duff images. Right, moving on. Audio generation. This is essentially text to speech. So you write text, and then the computer speaks it.
Business takes the path of least resistance until this ceases to be true. Then we scrabble to find a new path. This is the point where many fall by the wayside. The truly successful understand the inevitability of change and work with its ebb and flow.
So the first question you have to think to yourself is, what did I think to that voice? Was that a nice voice? Did I enjoy listening to it? Did it feel natural? Let's move on to another voice.
Business takes the path of least resistance until this ceases to be true. Then we scrabble to find a new path. This is the point where many fall by the wayside. The truly successful understand the inevitability of change and work with its ebb and flow.
Okay, that was Sally.
Business takes the path of least resistance until this ceases to be true. Then we scrabble to find a new path. This is the point where many fall by the wayside. The truly successful understand the inevitability of change and work with its ebb and flow.
Business takes the path of least resistance until this ceases to be true. Then we scrabble to find a new path. This is the point where many fall by the wayside. The truly successful understand the inevitability of change and work with its ebb and flow.
All right, so we've just listened to 4 different versions of the same piece of text. There's no tricks. This was all generated. I used a voice generation system, and each of these voices is available to anybody who wants it. I've even used the name that the company uses for the voice. So the Bella voice, Giovanni, that's exactly what the company calls them. So you could use them yourself if you wanted to. Now, did you notice how in the Giovanni voice, there was a long gap after the first sentence? I don't know why there's a long gap, but that's how it comes out when that particular voice reads this text. I don't know about you, but if I didn't know that any of these were generated voices, I wouldn't bat an eyelid. If I was listening to any of them as the voiceover to a video, or perhaps an ad, or actually even an ebook, right, an audiobook, I would have no trouble listening to them because they all sound like real people, right? Near enough. If we sit down and if you listen to the Sally voice again, you can actually hear that she makes a little noise with her mouth, right? Almost as if her mouth is a little dry. So she has in that voice little artifacts that a normal machine-generated voice does not have. It's those little pieces that you pick up on that you go, oh, that's a real person. And when you don't hear it, you go, that's just a little too perfect. That's how you know I'm real, because I keep making mistakes. Right, now, I hope you've all been paying attention to the mini wolves who've been listening to their podcasts, right? They're all very cute. They're all listening very intently. But have you noticed that none of the headphones are actually on their ears? I don't know if you spotted that the first time through. You probably didn't, because you're just used to seeing headphones over people's ears. Ears are on the side of their heads. But mini wolves, they have their ears on the top. So their ears are not covered by the headphones. So how they're listening to the podcast, I don't know. What can I say? Image generation, unreliable. So once again, we have a critical workflow. Now, step 1, obviously, you've got to have text. Otherwise, there's nothing for the machine to create the speech from. And it doesn't matter how you do it. You can do it by hand. You can write the script yourself. You can use the LLM to help you write the script, or a combination of the two, obviously. The important bit is that the script is succinct, covers your points, and of course, flows nicely. Next step, choose a suitable voice. Do you need a male voice, a female voice, an American, an Italian, like our Giovanni voice, or something, I'll call it regionally British, or Australian, or Spanish? And just because we're doing all of this in English, there is no reason you have to. If you, for example, want to promote your business in Spain and you need to have the machine do Spanish, then generate the text in Spanish. The LLM will work in Spanish. Choose a suitable voice that can speak Spanish with the Spanish accent. Make it right for what you need. But guess what we're going to do? We're going to check it because we have a key point here. Check the spoken content. Just because the machine's generating it doesn't mean it's perfect, right? I'm going to say, in my opinion, the Giovanni voice, there was far too long a pause. You got to the point where you think he's finished and he's just taking a little bit of a rest, perhaps a little lie down. But it doesn't make for compelling listening. So you might have to, if you get something like that, open it up in a sound editor, something like Audacity, and edit out some of the pauses, just to make it feel a little more snappy. Right, that covers music. Right, now, we've got some songs. Because you can now make songs, right? I've got 4, and you can see them, hopefully. They're all from Sono. I don't know how you pronounce it. But I have 4 different pieces of music. They're all 100% machine generated. Okay, so that was apparently ambient new disco emotional chords at 104 beats per minute. The important piece here is that was 100% machine generated. And if you think about a piece of music like that, you could use that as the background behind a video. Something completely different.
Echoes of the sacred melody.
Okay, something I should probably say. You're looking at this and you're probably reading the words. The machine generated the lyrics too. Okay, so it generated the music, it generated the lyrics, and it sings it. That's what Sono does for you. Something else, completely different energy, completely different feel. Once again, 100% machine generated, 100% machine rendered. All right, from that, and just 4 snippets from 4 different songs, I hope you can see that it doesn't take a huge amount of time or effort to produce a full song. And a song can be with lyrics or without. If you need something as inspirational music, tell the machine that you want inspirational music. Tell it how fast you want it. Tell it you want ethereal. Tell it you want 1970s funk, and it will know what that means, and it will generate you something realistic. The lyrics were all completely clear. You could understand what was being sung. You could follow the words. You could hear what they were singing. I think it's quite interesting. Now, how to leverage these kinds of things into our own projects. That's what we need to think about now. So we've got tools, right? It's clear we have tools. We can make music, we can have images, we can generate text, we can have that text spoken. Suddenly I'm thinking, there's all kinds of possibilities. What can we do? Okay, so let's create a workflow. Because I think it's important that we have some kind of structure, a process that we can look at and we can then use. So for every project you're going to do, and a project is a piece of work, come up with some ideas, 2, 3, 4, no more than 5. Otherwise you start to get to the point where you don't really know what it is you want. And so you're going to flounder and go around in circles. If you're doing something and it doesn't work, just stop and start again. So step 1, create. Step 2, prepare the LLM. Remember we talked about if you're going to use the large language model, you've got to prepare it with context so it knows what it's doing, what its goals are, and why it's doing it. Next, talk to it. Your goal is to get a first draft. You can always use the LLM by talking to it again to make improvements. You can tell it to change the language, be more upbeat, be more professional, include more facts, whatever it is you need, you can tell it to do it. And it will just go, okay, and off it goes and rewrites your piece of text with your new suggestions. Repeat this chat, suggest, repeat phase until you have something that works nicely. It doesn't have to be perfect. It only has to be 80, 90%. If you can get 80 to 90%, then it's done the bulk of the hard work for you. Now go and edit it by hand. Take the piece that the machine has done, edit it, brand voice, use your vocabulary, do all of those things. Turn it from a piece of text that was made by the machine to a piece of text that the machine made because it was producing you your first draft. Now you edit that first, I'm going to call it proper draft, into something much closer to final text. That's what you're trying to do. Once you've got that, you now have workable text. So let's look at some use cases. So you've created the script with the LLM, like we just did in the previous slide. You've edited it by hand, and now you've got not just good text, but you have a good script, right? So the create script with the LLM is last slide. The edit by hand is to polish your script, not the LLM content. Okay, you can now go and choose one of the AI voices that works nicely for you, your company, your voice, your message. You can generate images with image synthesis, just like we did earlier in the slideshow. And then you can stitch those things together. You can have the image. Actually, I'm going to tell you, this exact workflow, that DVANA video at the very beginning of this presentation, it was created like this. One small difference, I wrote the script by hand myself. Okay, I narrated it with 2 AI voices, the male one at the beginning, the female one afterwards. The images were all generated using image synthesis with Bing Image Create, and I used a Ken Burns effect to move the pictures while the voice spoke over the top to give those static pictures just a little bit of dynamic feel. So it felt a little bit more movie than just static pictures. But it doesn't take very long at all, because you've come up with your script, and once you've got your script, you have a pretty good idea of what the images need to be, because they have to go along with the script. So did you see that the theme in the video at the beginning was tools? So we had imagine you have an electric screwdriver. Imagine how that transforms your abilities compared to a manual screwdriver. Well, at that point, when we're talking about screwdrivers, we had an image of electric screwdrivers and manual screwdrivers, right? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. You don't have to generate the images. If you have photos, video clips from your business, use those. The advantage to using the AI voice, and there's one really big advantage, you don't have to have a really good sound environment to record audio. To do a video with actual people, you have to have a good environment so you don't catch the sounds of cars driving past, people chatting, or whatever it is. You need a very good sound dampening environment. That takes time, costs a lot of money, etc., etc. But if you're going to use these kinds of tools, well, the machine's generating the voice inside the computer. So it doesn't matter how loud it is outside, it's done inside the computer in silence, which is why the voice comes over nice and clearly. I can then layer music underneath it. I can put sound effects around it. I can do what I like because I have a nice, clear voice. So stitch it all together, render out your video, and hey presto, you have a video. That's exactly what I did at the beginning. You can create a podcast. Well, that's very much like a video, but without the picture bit. So exactly the same. Create your script with the LLM, polish it by hand, choose your voice, and get the AI to narrate it. Hey presto, you're done. And more importantly, if you're going to make podcasts and you're going to do it this way, you have a consistent voice every time, or you can have 2 or 3 voices. Heck, there's nothing to stop you having 2 voices talk to each other, or at least appear to talk to each other, so I can have one voice interviewing the other voice. It's not pretending that they're people. Remember, we're not creating people, we're creating content. And there's a huge difference between trying to pretend that we're creating people and we're creating content. We're making content. Same thing, I want to make an article for my blog, for somewhere else, it doesn't really matter. You can generate the text with the LLM, just like we talked about before. Edit it by hand, brand voice, correct words, your phraseology, put all of those pieces in, make it your own. Right, remember, we're treating the LLM just like it's a junior copywriter. We're getting it to do the bulk of the work so we can do, I'm going to call it the bit that makes it special. And by doing the bit that makes it special, you're taking what is essentially generic-ish copy and you're making it yours. It's no different than if I employed a junior copywriter, got them to write 90% of the article, or email in this case, and then I finished it up, the last little bits myself. Exactly the same. This is an actual image I used the other day on LinkedIn. So I had an LLM generate the glass for me. I then used the orange background, I put the text over the top, I added the logo, and hey presto, I have an article image for an article that I posted on LinkedIn. The LLM created the glass with the trees in it, the valley, in summer and in winter. I have no idea why, but you know what? It wasn't what I was expecting, but I thought it was a really nice image. So I thought, you know what? I'll go and use it. I created a load of other images that day, some with ice cubes, some with other things, but this was the one that struck me as the most interesting. Anyway, the article was on, is the glass half full or the glass half empty? And the answer is neither, but I'm not going to tell you. You can go to LinkedIn and you can find the article yourself. It'll be in my articles. And I think it's also in the Coaching Works articles. You can use it to summarize things. So for example, summarize chat, summarize a document, an email, whatever it is you want to summarize. So the output is a smaller version of the input. So if you've just fed it 20 pages of text, it'll produce you 3/4 of a page, giving you a gist of what's going on. These things can also now be done live in real time. So if you have a need to summarize, yes, these tools can work with that quite nicely and quite easily. Okay, speech to text. So you've got something that's been spoken. Maybe it's a video, and you've probably seen this now on YouTube. If you don't have official closed captioning or subtitles for a video, YouTube will try and generate them on the fly. So it'll listen to the spoken audio and it will then convert that into, well, subtitles for the video as you watch it. But you can do this with your own stuff as well. So if you have some speech that you really would like the text for, there are services you can upload the spoken audio, it gets processed and you download the text. Some of them will even work with multiple speakers. So this kind of thing works really quite nicely for the summary of meetings, particularly if you've had multiple people speaking and you've got the right service. Right, I'm going to say sky's the limit. You can create custom chatbots. So for example, for a couple of £100 of hosting, and I do mean literally a couple of hundred, you can have a chatbot on your website that will answer questions to anybody who comes to your website, potential clients, customers, current or future. And you can literally have it do anything that you have documentation for. Obviously, content generation, we've just talked about that. Financial analysis, which I'm not going to go into because that's not what we're talking about today. And of course, for understanding data. So you can provide it large amounts of data, relatively speaking, and interrogate it as to what's going on. It makes understanding or the analysis of data much quicker and much easier. Now, something that's happened very recently, Monday last week, and I said I wasn't going to name names, but I need to at this point. OpenAI came out with a new model of ChatGPT, so-called version 4.0, and it's O as in Omni, not 0. So apparently the O stands for Omni, because they showed the LLM watching video and listening to people and interacting backwards and forwards. It was a demo, so we don't know exactly how real it is because they haven't released it yet. It should be rolling out in the next week or two, at which point we will see. The new model is also available for free if you're using the free or paid for ChatGPT. The new model is supposed to be better than the previous one at generating text. I've had a little play with it. I'm going to say it probably is a bit better, but for the stuff I use it for, the other one was actually pretty good. So there are plenty of options. While OpenAI's ChatGPT is one, there are literally dozens of other providers, all who have different pricing models, all who have different, I'm going to call it highs and lows. Highs are things that they're good at, lows things they're not so good at. Nobody's good at everything. And depending on what you're trying to do, one of the other providers might well be offering something useful to you. Obviously, price is going to be an issue. But if you're going to start generating content using any of the models and things we've just been discussing, then it shouldn't be too much of a stretch for you to go £20 a month. I can easily afford that to generate videos, text, speech, podcasts, or all those other things, or £30 or £40 or whatever it is. Just remember that if you're just doing a little bit, you can often get away with using some of this stuff for free. And that's always very nice. So that's me pretty much done. So I'm going to say,
if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
And yeah, that's a trick. That wasn't me. That was another AI voice.
Thank you very much, Katherine. That's actually a really, really good walkthrough from actually what GPT stands for through to the practical applications of how it actually can be used in business. But there clearly is an area, I think, where human intervention is still required. And I suspect there will be a point in time in the future, and God knows when that point in time will be, where will human intervention be required? I suppose that is part of the question, I suppose, from me. Is there do you see that as, I think there's always a tick and check of stuff that anything produces, just to be sure.
Will there be a point in time? If there is, then humans are no longer necessary and the whole thing is pointless.
Yeah, well, there you go. So it'll stop learning, won't it, I suppose?
It will. I mean, I'm looking at these and I'm thinking of these as just tools in the toolbox, the same as a word processor or a spreadsheet or a PowerPoint thing, you know, or your accounting software. It's just a different tool to produce whatever it is you need to do. And for some businesses, it will be useful. For others, they'll look at it and go, I have no need for a fairy robot typing on a laptop, right? It's just of no use to me. And you go, fair enough. If this isn't of use, then just ignore it. Just skip over it because it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any questions. I'll put the gallery up so I can see if anyone wants to put their hand up or come off mute to ask any question. So Mike, have you got?
Yeah, I think an observation really. You say, Katherine, you were just saying, do I really want, you know, mini wolves or fairies typing on a keyboard with only 3 fingers? I think, yeah, there's some bizarre stuff at the moment, and it's easy to kind of dismiss it and laugh at it. But I think we really all should experiment, you know, take some time, experiment with it, because it is absolutely amazing technology. Be aware of its pitfalls, particularly the things that Katherine's pointed out. And in terms of, will we ever replace the human touch? I certainly don't think so. In terms of the size of the model, you know, the large, where you mentioned large language model, it is something like a factor of, I don't know whether it's the size of a cat's brain, but it's something like 100 or 1,000 millionths of the size of a human brain at the moment. And to build a model with the number of parameters that the human brain has, the number of neurons, would take 29 years. So I don't think we need to worry just yet.
It's not a concern of mine either, Mike. I'm looking at the world and I'm going, there are tools we can use today. We might as well use them. If you're going to worry about what could be in the future, then I think you're missing the present. I don't mean you personally, I mean anybody.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a good comment, good point.
Yeah. Okay. No, I'm very conscious of the time, and it's been a very, very informative presentation, Katherine. So thank you very much for that. And with that, we will end the session for today. Thank you.